Hello and welcome back to the VolReport Show. I'm Ryan Silvia with VolReport.com on the Rivals Network. And I wanted to hop on here and just talk about recruiting because Tennessee is killing the recruiting game right now in both the 2025 and 2026 classes, now with two commits over in that 26 class and a good amount. We got 21 right now locked in for Tennessee in the 21 class. They're just outside of the top 10 and 25 at number 11. But there's a lot of targets left on the board. We'll get to that. We'll get to the David Sanders Jr. and some of the 25 guys that'll come off the board soon that Tennessee has its eyes on. And then we'll also talk about the 2026 class, two recruits now in the boat. They're up to number 13 in the country on there, but a lot of work to be done. And I'll let you know the names that you need to know in 26 as well. So let's jump right into it and talk about those two guys in the 2026 class that are committed. First guy in the boat, Faison Brandon. He is from Greensboro, North Carolina, four-star quarterback. The thing about him is, depending on where you look, he could be the best player in that class. Like, just because he's a four-star right now doesn't mean he'll end up as a four-star on Rivals.com. He is a great talent. You watch the film and it jumps out. And I think it's an easy comparison to make because they're both from Greensboro and their high schools were just 10 minutes apart. But when you watch Brandon's film, you can't help but see a little bit of Hendon Hooker. And what I mean by that is he's got the arm strength to make any throw that he needs to on the field. But what makes him such an elite option at quarterback is his accuracy. You think back to when Hendon Hooker was kind of really succeeding in that 2022 offense for Tennessee. It was plays to Jalen Hyatt where he breaks the kind of shell of the defense and the ball's just on the money. It's right in that pocket as he's going down the sideline, over the middle, or to Brew McCoy against Florida right before the half, where he just kind of throws a dart in there and that ball is just placed exactly where it needs to be. That's what jumps out the most to me on Brandon's film is the accuracy that he has in the short game, in the intermediate game, when he's throwing into the flats, when he's throwing over the middle, when he's hitting a seam, when he's going deep. The ball just seems to more often than not be where it needs to be. And that's from film when he was just a sophomore too. He's going into his junior year. So he's only going to get better from here. And that's why I say it doesn't matter where his ranking is, whether it's the number one player in the entire country, whether it's lower than maybe you think it should be. He has 2 years of high school football left to play before he's going to be in Knoxville playing for Tennessee. And it looks like his stock is rising, and players around the country have noticed it. One of those players, Carson Snead, he's the second guy in the boat. A big deal to get a guy from Tennessee early in this class as well, I think. There's a couple other targets from that Nashville area that Tennessee is eyeing in on in that 2026 class. Once again, we'll get to some of those names to know as we go forward. But Carson Snead's a really nice tight end to pair up with Brandon. And I think what's kind of cool about Carson Snead committing is how that's increased now the amount of commits Tennessee has gotten at that tight end position since Alec Ablin's taken over. We just talked to Alec Ablin over after a practice at the practice facility recently. He talked about how when he first got this job, it was kind of stressful to him about that whole recruiting process. And maybe he didn't feel like he had the best grasp on it that he maybe needed to. Well, that's changed very quickly. Not only has he gone into the portal and landed guys like Miles Kitzelman and Holden Stays, but now he's doing it at the high school level as well. And you look to that 2025 class, Jack Dolor-Soler, and then now recently flipping to Son Brain, and now you have Carson Snead in the boat. You're getting elite tight ends. And Carson Snead is the definition of an elite tight end. He's the number 2 player in the state of Tennessee, number 5 tight end in the class, number 75 nationally, a 4-star guy. He had visits everywhere. He had offers everywhere. He could have went pretty much anywhere in the country he wanted to, and he wanted to stay home and play for Tennessee. So those are the two guys in Tennessee's class right now for the 2026 cycle. Let's talk about some names you need to know going forward. Number 1 guy, I think, at the top of the list, number 6 player in the country, number 1 guy out of Georgia, number 1 player at his position, Tyler Atkinson. Tyler Atkinson dropped his top 10 schools list last September. Tennessee was in there along with a lot of the other top players in the country, like Georgia, who they're going to probably have to compete for pretty hard. But Tyler Atkinson's been a guy on Tennessee's list for a while now that they really want to bring in at that outside linebacker position. Stands at 6'2", 210 pounds. and he's elite. He's someone that would be a big boost to Tennessee's linebacker room. I think he would probably play that weak side position for Tennessee if he made his way to Knoxville. And it would be kind of one of those big time lands that really starts to boost the rankings of this class. And of course, rankings aren't all that matters, but he's probably the number one guy at the top of that list. You keep scrolling down. Kendra Harrison's going to jump out. He's teammates with David Sanders Jr. over at Providence Day in Charlotte now, another tight end. So do you want two classes in a row where you double up on tight ends? Well, Tennessee would welcome that with Kendra Harrison, and it's because of how much of an elite talent he is at the tight end position. Number 17 player in the country, number 2 in the state of North Carolina, number 1 at his position of tight end. He is the real deal, and Tennessee would not shy away from adding him. You have Aaron Gregory, a receiver that Tennessee is going to give a really hard look at. Another guy from Georgia, number 3 receiver in the country, number 5 in the state, number 21 nationally. He's someone that I think Tennessee is going to take a hard look at. He's trimmed down his schools to the top 20, but Tennessee was on the list, and it's someone that Tennessee, I think, is going to give a hard look at. Samari Matthews, excuse me. He's a cornerback from North Carolina, and he's another guy that Tennessee's been in contact with. He's had his offer for a while too, and I think that's one of the big themes with Tennessee and their success recruiting is their early identification of guys. Is they're not hopping in late. Samari Matthews is a 2026 guy, right? He's going into his junior year. He's held that offer since 2022. Tennessee identified it early, jumped on it early, and that's paid off with a lot of guys so far. And that Matthews could be another one on the list. James Tank Carrington. Tennessee probably needs to beef up a little bit at the defensive tackle position. They've, for the most part, recently looked at edge guys. They've had to flip some guys like a David Hobbs who came in. They probably thought he was going to play on the edge and had to move him into the interior. James Tank Carrington would be a guy that instantly could play in that interior. And he's also teammates with Douglas Utu, the 5-star tackle commit Tennessee has in the 2025 class. So Carrington's a name you should know. Savion Hyder, he's the top running back in this 26 class. Tennessee's in on him too. Ty Young King, he's someone that just came to Tennessee. He's the number 1 inside linebacker in the class. He just came to Tennessee all the way from out in Texas, made a family trip. VolReport talked to him. I had a conversation with him. He talked about how cool it was that they accepted his nephews to be able to come, or his cousins, excuse me, to be able to come and enjoy that visit with them and kind of that family atmosphere that we've all heard about for Tennessee. So he's interested in Tennessee already. Darius Gray is a name you should know along the interior of the line. If they're looking at an offensive guard, Darius Gray is one of them. He was recently on campus in June. Tyreek King, if we're talking Tennessee guys, Tyreek King is one of the ones you need to know. Number 3 guy in the state, number 1 guy in the state that's uncommitted right now. He's from Knoxville as well, goes to Knoxville Catholic. So he's going to be able to get to Tennessee as much as he wants to in Tennessee. Feels like he could be a big piece, probably a slot guy for Tennessee if that's where they want to go. Brody Keefe, another guy from Myers Park, Charlotte. He is a receiving prospect to keep an eye on. Cottrell Webb could be one of the future guys to come off the board soon. He has a commitment date set in November for, I believe it's on his birthday. He's from Sewanee, Georgia. Strong side defensive end. Cottrell Webb, will have more on him actually tomorrow or the day you're watching this, if you're watching it on release, over at VolReport.com. He just spoke with us. He is definitely a name to keep an eye on. Let's talk about some guys in state, though. Justin Hopkins, 3-star safety from Ensworth over in Nashville. He's a guy that's going to be peer recruited, especially by Carson Sneed. I know they have a relationship, so that's probably a name to keep tabs on. Brody Smith from Maryville could be an interesting one. Joel Wyatt from Bell Buckle, Tennessee. He goes to Webb, is a name to keep an eye on at receiver. Gabriel Osenda, an offensive tackle, goes to Baylor School in Chattanooga. Obviously, Tennessee's had success there. Zach Groves from Cross Plains, Tennessee, is someone to look at. So that's kind of the 2026 class. I know I just threw a lot of names at you, but I wanted to get some of those names out there because, of course, 2025 is still being built on. There's still a lot of talented guys and uncommitted guys that are left on the board, but 2026 is going to start heating up. And I wanted to put some names out there just so when that does come up, it's not the first time you're hearing them. You go, oh, James Carrington, the defensive tackle I've heard of him. I know who James Carrington is. When you hear Kendra Harrison, okay, I know who Kendra Harrison is. If you want the full list, though, I have over 30 guys listed that you need to know in that 2026 class as Tennessee looks to jump up in those rankings. I'll put it in the description of this video. You need to be a subscriber to read it, though, at VolReport.com. I think it's going to be a fun tool to use and to look back on as well when this class starts to take form and see, hey, it's August of 2024. Maybe it's August of 25, and a lot of these guys are off the board now. Which ones ended up being in the boat? Which ones ended up going elsewhere and kind of see the hit rate that Tennessee had in that 2026 class? Let's turn the page, though. Let's go to the 25 class. Currently, they have 21 commits, number 11 in the country on Rivals.com. First, let's just talk about some of the big names that are in the boat already. Douglas Utu, who we talked about out of Las Vegas, teammates with Carrington, who we just mentioned in the 2026 class. Douglas Utu is the real deal on the offensive line. He's one of the top players in the country. It was a big deal to land him for Tennessee. Number 1 guy in Nevada, number 2 tackle behind David Sanders Jr. in that class. And he picks Tennessee in late June. I think if you told people a month before his commitment, maybe even a little less than a month before his commitment, that Douglas Utu was going to pick Tennessee, they might not have believed you. But Tennessee pulls it off, and it comes right after his official visit to Tennessee as well. He takes an official visit on the 21st and commits on the 24th. So Tennessee kind of with an upset there, and that is their lone 5-star in the class at the moment. They have a couple guys floating around that 5-star mark, with the next closest being George McIntyre. And I think landing George McIntyre is probably the biggest deal of this class so far, not only because you get a really talented quarterback, but you get a massive peer recruiter in George McIntyre. And he's been in the boat since January of 2024. And since then, we've seen him on Twitter, on Instagram, in person, on visits, and everything in between, going really hard after some guys and making sure that he gets talent around him. And when you have that talented quarterback in the class so early, it really is appealing for a wide receiver, for a running back, for an offensive lineman, even for guys on the defensive side of the ball, to know that they have one of the top quarterbacks in the class already committed, already kind of ready to go. Another one that maybe wasn't a shock, but maybe a little bit of a surprise, Marion Dye is someone to keep an eye on for Tennessee. Another 4-star who's kind of sniffing around that 5-star mark. He's from Indiana. He's the number 1 guy in that state. He's the number 7 strong side defensive end, and he could be a 5-star when it's all said and done. He has that much talent. It would take for these guys, your senior season, you'd really have to explode to make those big, meaningful jumps. But Marion Dye is really good and could come in and play a quick role for Tennessee as an edge rusher. So that's a name I really like. One of the more recent guys to hop in, Travis Smith Jr. out of Atlanta, a wide receiver. He's the top wide receiver for Tennessee in this class so far. But overall, that receiver position's been pretty well recruited for Kelsey Pope and company in this 2025 class. Darius Jackson, another 4-star guy who could keep rising, who Tennessee, once again, identified early and has built that relationship and moved forward with it. And Jakeem Dotson from Chattanooga is someone as well to keep tabs on, who is committed but could come to campus and play a nice role for Tennessee. So they've committed that or recruited that receiver position well. Deshaun Brain at tight end, Justin Baker at running back. We talked Jack Van Dorselaere at tight end. Ethan Utley, though, is another one I wanted to touch on because of the pure recruiting aspect. And that is such a big deal, I think, in this age of college football recruiting, is they don't want to just hear it from head coach Josh Heupel. They don't want to just hear it from their position coach. They want to hear, one, from guys that are in the program. That's what a lot of people say is, those guys aren't lying to you. When they're in the locker room, they'll tell you how it is. So when you hear them say things are going well and they like what they see, that's a good sign. But you also want to hear it from your peers, from people that are your age, going through the same process, that have picked Tennessee and are wanting to win at Tennessee or whatever school they're at. Ethan Utley is one of those guys. Him and George McIntyre were huge into Deshaun Brain flipping. They didn't let Deshaun Brain's Oregon commitment stick with that. They still were after him, and they wanted him to come to Knoxville and to play football with him at the college level, and it paid off. And when we talk guys that have upcoming commitments, that's going to be pivotal as well. David Sanders Jr., he has a really nice relationship with George McIntyre. And that could be a big difference in, do I want to go to Nebraska, which he has a relationship a bit with Dylan Raiola, so that is something, or do I want to go to Tennessee, where maybe I know a George McIntyre, or do I want to go to Ohio State, or where do I want to go? Sometimes for these kids, a lot of it comes down to other people in that class. Like, they want to be a part of really strong classes, and that's what Tennessee's beginning to build in this 25 class. So who do you need to know coming up? David Sanders Jr. is the next guy with a locked-in date off the board that you need to know about. The number 2 player in the country from Providence Day, North Carolina, 5-star ranking. He's deciding between Tennessee, Ohio State, and Nebraska is what it really seems to have come down to. We're a week away now, or 10 days away now for David Sanders Jr. This would skyrocket Tennessee's class. I mean, once again, recruiting rankings, it's cool to look at. It's cool to brag about. It's something that's worth noting sometimes, but it's not the end of the world. It depends how they play on Saturdays once they get to campus. David Sanders Jr. would not only launch the recruiting ratings, but he would be a big impact when he got to campus. Tennessee's losing a lot of linemen this year. You'll have Lance Hurd back for his junior season. The other tackle position, John Campbell Jr., is gone. I'm not saying David Sanders is going to come in and start as a true freshman, especially on the offensive line. That is such a difficult thing to do. But there's playtime for the taking early in his career, I guess is how I should put it. He's someone that definitely could, by the time things are all said and done, be one of the better linemen on Tennessee's roster and work his way, or in Tennessee history, and work his way into a first-round pick. Like, that is his ceiling, is to be an elite tackle at the college level. So Tennessee, they have their work cut out for them to close this deal, because it really just seems like it's a 3-man race right now. It depends who you talk to. You talk to some guys and they say, oh, man, he's going to Nebraska. You talk to some guys, I mean, it's going to be really tough for anyone to pull him away from Ohio State. You talk to some people and they think, man, he's pretty much already signed the papers at Tennessee. It's interesting to see which one he's going to pick as we kind of come down to the final stretch. But Tennessee is in a really, really nice position for David Sanders Jr. I think you might have to consider them the favorite right now, even for the number 2 player in the class. And like George McIntyre, like Ethan Utley, peer recruiter, yeah. Do guys want to play with him? Absolutely. It would be a big deal for this 2025 class to keep on building as well. Right after David Sanders Jr., on August 23rd, Onis Konanbani, a guy from the UK who came over to the States to play some football, a defensive back. He plays mostly safety over in Columbia, South Carolina. He's down to 2 schools. Neither of them are the Gamecocks. Tennessee and Florida State are the 2 teams that Onis Konanbani is looking at. Just dropped that top 2 recently. And I think Tennessee is probably in the lead for this one too. Another guy they've been over for a while now. They've liked what they've had in Onis Konanbani. They've liked what they've seen, and they've wanted to bring him in, and that's what kind of stands out to some of these guys. Onis Konanbani is someone that Tennessee would definitely welcome as far as defensive backs. They have a good amount of defensive backs already committed. You start at the top of that list with Trey Poteet, who's a 4-star defensive back. Shady Hayward just committed, a 4-star defensive back out of Georgia. Dylan Lewis has been in the boat forever now, since October of 23. Sidney Walton's been in the boat since April, another defensive back. You would keep going down. Tyler Redmond, he's been in here since November of 23. So Tennessee's got defensive backs. But Onis Konanbani is a special player. He's someone that Tennessee would definitely like to bring in, and he matches what Tennessee wants to do in that secondary very well, where right now it's a young group. It's an inexperienced group, but it's very talented. And that's kind of just what instantly jumps off the page when you look at Tennessee's secondary. Onis Konanbani fits that long, athletic, talented mold that Josh Heupel and company have been looking for at Tennessee for the secondary as they look to move forward to that position group. Last guy worth keeping tabs on, I guess, still, Dwayne Morris, running back, in-state guy, committed to USC. The hype slowed down on him a little bit. For a while, it looked like that flip was in the imminent future. Things have slowed down. We'll see what he does. There was rumors that he visited Tennessee in that weekend where things opened back up. There were rumors that He visited Auburn when things opened back up. He told Vol Report he stayed at home. He goes to Oakland High School in Tennessee. He stayed home. He focused on himself. He's ready to go into this season. He is a USC commit. We'll see if that sticks. We'll see if Tennessee flips him. Tennessee already has a running back in the class, but they would like to pair him up with Dwayne Morris if possible, because they like what both guys bring to the table. So that's just someone that's also worth keeping an eye on right now as this 2025 class continues to take form. But it's a really nice class Tennessee has put together, and it could finish top 5. If David Sanders Jr. joins, who knows how high this thing could go as well with some more guys that I want to play with him. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Tweet at me at Ryan T. Sylvia. If you want them answered immediately, I'll definitely see if you put it in the forum at volreport.com. Links to everything you need is in the description. Thank you for watching.